material too. Man, I've not really read a ton of the Seth stuff. Some of the guys that research with me are heavy into it. And some friends are, but I've never, I'm so suspicious of channeled material.
So am I. That's the thing. Seth is one of the only ones that I will give any credence to because it's very detailed. It's very skeptical of itself. It seems very down to earth, and the practices work.
Yeah.
So no matter where it's coming from, because Jane Roberts herself said she didn't know, it could just be part of her unconscious or whatever. The data was at least in part useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most channeling, I've gotten a little more, open-minded toward channeling, but still Seth is the only one where I'm like, okay, the Seth material is impressive.
Now I've got to get into it and see, and read more of it. There's the raw stuff. We talked about that last time too. You know?
And that stuff's not impressive.
Yeah, no. And some of that stuff feels, even some of the Edgar Cayce stuff seems a little, I believe it, but I don't know. Sometimes you just wonder if some of it isn't being channeled from a reliable source.
Right.
I guess I'll say, don't you think that it's weird that Edgar Cayce is from Hopkinsville, where the whole little green men thing started,
That's right.
The Hopkinsville goblins, like that's an odd thing. And that's always struck me as a weird, I don't know. Have you ever heard the story? This is one of my favorite stories of people receiving messages. Have you heard the story about Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the project to build Oak Ridge was where they built the nuclear bomb, right?
Okay.
And so it was a top secret project. Well, I think it was in 1840 or 1839, 1840, something like that. This farmer who lived in northern Tennessee, where this is, he had this huge farm, and he was out on his farm, and he said this beam of light hit him, right? And it knocked him out, or knocked him down on the ground. And he saw all around him this vast city that was on his farm, like all around him. There's all these people, they were dressed strange, they were moving around. And then he saw this gigantic, what he called mushroom, grow up from the earth, right? And so he wakes up from this experience, where he says this beam of energy or beam of light came down from the sky and hit him and gave him this vision. He goes to town and he tells everybody, right? And from that point on, for the rest of his life, he was treated as a nut job.
Of course.
But the thing right, of course, they're like, oh, you're crazy old farmer. The thing that's amazing about this story is that the newspaper recorded that whole thing of him telling, like they recorded the vision, they recorded what he said, and then they made fun of him in the newspaper, right? Well, 100 years, right, later, that dude's farm is where they built this secret city of Oak Ridge that only was built to house all of the people working on the atomic bomb.
Damn.
And it's in Oak Ridge's museum, right, in Tennessee, where they have the museum about building the bomb and all this stuff. They have that newspaper article. And to me, that's, incontrovertible truth, proof.
Yeah.
That there is something to all of this. There's something to the nature of reality that is, and people don't tout that. But it's verified. It's the government even accepts that happened. Of course, people are like, well, he didn't see this, but it sounds like that's what he saw,
Right. He may not have seen it exactly how it was because it was being filtered,
Yeah.
And that's the thing with channeling too, is that, Seth would always say, you're not getting what he's saying. You're getting what he's saying channeled and filtered through Jane.
Mm-hmm. And Jane's the extent to which Jane can communicate with words.
And plus it would have Jane's biases and stuff like that into it too. Also, what impressed me about Seth is he never claimed to be omniscient in any way.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, some stuff I just don't know. But I mean, one of the things that impressed me is when he said that they asked about UFOs, and he said, those are actually consciousnesses from another reality. So basically interdimensional. Mm-hmm. And that he was kind of surprised we could see them.
That's interesting. Well, so what was Seth? What did Seth purport to be?
Just like the oversoul of Jane and a few other people.
Okay. Huh. And where did the name Seth come from?
I forget.
Yeah. I've got to dive into that, man. That's so fascinating to me, especially if there are elements of it that are sort of way more concrete than other channelings.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And I was so used to seeing channeling works that was just mumbo jumbo and unverifiable stuff. But here was Seth with a lot of detail, a lot of specific sort of things. And it's like, huh, all right.
Well, one of the interesting things to me about channeling too is, and Darian and I, my research partner, have talked about this a lot, the staccato nature, like when you watch filmed channeling sessions, right?
Yeah.
Or if you listen to the raw stuff, there's a lot of stuff, and I think probably the Seth stuff is the same way. There's a staccato delivery of it.
It's like someone being puppeted.
Yes, it's like da 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 da. And there's like a cadence to the way.
Yeah.
And that makes me think that there is a passage of information, right? It feels like that's why it's called channeling, obviously, but it feels like there is a conduit, a circuit sort of built, and Darian, he proposed at one point that some of this information is looking for the most, it's Shannon entropy, it's this whole idea of, information theory, that information is always looking for the most efficient channel to express itself. Right, to output itself.
Yeah.
And so, and I've wondered that with like the pennyroyal stuff, right? Did these things sort of come to us in this configuration because we were in the right place at the right time in such a configuration that it was the most efficient channel for it? But were other people also interacting with something, the same thing maybe, but they weren't at the right time, they weren't as efficient as this was as a channel for it to express itself.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, we're also assuming that anything that's being channeled is going to be completely true and is not going to lie or just make stuff up.
Yeah. Because if it's just information, it doesn't have to be true or not true.
Exactly.
It's just information. Right. And so it's like, we're the ones labeling that it's a lie. Right.
Yeah,
when it's just data. That's like saying the output of a computer is a lie. It's lying to you. It can't lie to you. Right. It's just trying to pass information out.
I don't know. I suspect some computers have lied to me.
I do too. I think so also. I don't trust these things.
you get something and you're going, no, that's wrong. And it's like, no, it's not. It's like, no, it's wrong. What are you doing?
That's right. Yeah. Oh.
That's so one of the I still have a list of stuff I wanted to talk to you about. Let's talk about randomness though for the last few minutes here, because I don't remember if we talked. I don't think we talked about it last week. We might have mentioned it in the Patreon segment.
Yeah. I don't think so, but I love talking about randomness.
But the random number generator stuff just blows my mind because we definitely talked about it at some point because it's like points of cohesion where things become less random.
Yes, yeah. The whole pair random number generator project, to me, is verifiable evidence that there are effects on reality. If anything, it proves to me that magic is possibly real.
Yes.
Right?
Well, because consciousness affects randomness.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which we already know from psi research.
Yes. Yeah. And definitely with this idea that an event is going to happen, and then 24 hours before this globally traumatic event, or just this event that everyone as observers will observe, that the randomness drops, right? Because in order for us to know that reality is functioning correctly, it needs to be completely random, right? It's just a sea of, it's like static electricity or static on a TV, right? It's just got to all be random. And then it's like when a picture forms, when it's less random, then you know that something it's becoming more deterministic, right? And so something is influencing it. Definitely when we talk about like the will of a magician, who's, and especially like I think we talked about this, the chaos magicians and how they're stacking, synchronicities to cause an effect, right?
Right.
And they're imposing their will. So if that is true, then if you had a random number generator in the vicinity of that magician while they're imposing their will on reality, you should see a drop in randomness. I think the same is true if someone were communicating with a disembodied intelligence or a non-human intelligence. Any of these things that are, would have an effect on reality, especially synchronicities too, there would be a definable and discernible decrease in what's called Shannon entropy. We'd be able to see that randomness drop. And then we've developed devices ourselves to try to track that. And I think I would love for some ghost investigators, paranormal investigators, even Bigfoot hunters, to take these devices with them, right? And then just leave them running. And if they have an encounter, let's look at the data and see if there's a correlation between an encounter with high strangeness, if there, or even with like a UFO, can't really know when a UFO is going to appear to somebody, I guess.
No, not generally.
But definitely going into a haunted, what's perceived to be a haunted house or a haunted location or a portal area or where people cite things. Just if you had something tracking the randomness in that area, if you did encounter something, I truly believe, and it's my theory, is that randomness will decrease, that you'll see an effect, a deterministic effect on reality when you encounter the other.
Well, and that is synchronicity in a sense, because synchronicity is that lack of randomness. Mm-hmm. These things shouldn't happen. They're an effect. They're a result of randomness becoming less.
Yeah. I put this in the final episode of the show, but that whole idea of Magnolia, the film, Paul Thomas.
I love that movie.
I love it too, man. And the way that they open it up with all of these sort of Fortean phenomena, right? The rain of frogs, or the woman who...
Well, don't they end with the rain of frogs, don't they?
Yeah, they end with the rain of frogs. Yeah, they open with like 4 or 5 stories of impossible coincidences, right?
Yeah.
And so I tried to open up the episode with that because it's got that great message that these things happen.
Yes.
Right. And so because these things happen, it means that there's something greater at work
right
here, and I think that's a powerful message. And that's what Fort, was looking at. It's the damned data. Yeah. Right, that's the books of the damned. Book of the Damned. It's these things that don't fit in with the natural, what's perceived to be the natural order of things. And so it's true. It's like, man, if we had the ability to track randomness, when John Keel was experiencing all the Mothman stuff. Right?
Oh yeah.
Imagine what data he might have had if we had these random number generators when the JFK assassination happened. Or when Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, I absolutely believe we would have seen determinism.
So the Archduke one is very interesting because that wouldn't have necessarily been a big event. Like no one, I don't think anyone suspected it was going to lead to World War II or World War I.
No. Yeah. And think about it. I mean, the guy failed the assassination. Like the assassination failed. The guy fled.
Yeah.
Ended up in a cafe, and then they had car trouble and drove down the wrong alleyway and pulled up beside the assassin. It's like that's that seems impossible, right?
So like locally, I would think that would cause a lack of randomness.
Yes, yeah. There would have been a huge drop in randomness in that moment, right when he shot him. It would have been, and see. that's that moment where other people nearby